Thank you, everyone. My name is Tim. I'm an alcoholic. Very glad to be here. I've just taken my glasses off, which means I mean business. So nice to see a lot of faces there. It's always nice to be able to see who I'm addressing. If you can't turn it on, it's fine, but so there's no pressure. But it's always fun to see people's faces. Um, my date of sobriety is the 24th of July, 1993. My home group is Group 12 in San Antonio in Texas. I don't live in San Antonio, but it's my home group. Such are the wonders of technology these days. Now, I don't know any of you really. I know a couple of people, but that's all. And the danger when discussing steps 10, 11, and 12 is you lose the newcomers. You lose anyone who hasn't got as far as that. So I'm going to mention some of the earlier steps and try to place steps 10, 11, and 12 in a context that helps them make sense, because they are in a context. They're not separated from the rest of the program. So I'm going to start actually with step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, so included in step 12, what to understand it, one's got to understand what process has taken place so far. And the basic condition I was in when I got to AA was a very simple one. It didn't seem to be a simple one at the time, but simple it was. It was this: I'm incapable of drinking moderately. And if you're incapable of drinking moderately, you're going to have some consequences from your drinking. What those are doesn't matter terribly. The consequences propelled me into AA, but step one kept me here. I was unable to drink moderately, so the only solution was to stop drinking altogether. But the difficulty was that I have a mind which is unable to remember consistently that a drink is a terrible idea. And for me to drink again, two things would have to be operative. Number one, the thought of a drink would have to occur to me. Secondly, I would have to obey that thought. Now, mercifully, my sobriety does not depend on me never again having a crazy thought. Good luck with that one if that's your approach. Now, it is true that lots of meetings and fellowship and service and sponsorship and steps will tone down the physical brain, but it's not going to stop it shooting out crazy ideas, even occasionally. You see, with alcoholism, one crazy idea a year is enough to kill you if you follow it. So the problem is not the crazy ideas. If the problem was the crazy ideas, the newcomers would never stay sober. I wouldn't have stayed sober. I was nuts in my first year. Nuts, not using the steps. Well, I was using the steps, but I was still nuts anyway. This is the point. I was nuts. AA did not make me sane first and then keep me sober. It kept me sober even though I was nuts, because I made a decision. The decision was, I'm going to do what AA tells me to do, not what my head tells me to do, not what my physical brain tells me to do. I believe that the physical brain is different than the mind. My physical brain, my rat and lizard brain, cannot be re-educated. All it does is churn out what it's programmed to do. It wants comfort, it wants relief, and it remembers where it used to get them. So the solution is to have something to follow other than my most recent thought. When I got to AA, the only thing I was following was my most recent thought. If my most recent thought was I would like to stay sober, I would stay sober. If my most recent thought was I'd like to drink, I would drink. There'd occasionally be a little bit of argument, but essentially, I was in the thrall of my own brain. It was in charge. So, step one is really the recognition I'm in the grip of something which will kill me if it is not arrested, because it will condemn me to drink, and once I drink, I'm just going to carry on until I'm dead. I have a condition which is fatal, progressive, and incurable, and my life is unmanageable not because of neurosis or incompetence or disorganization, although I had those too. My life was unmanageable because, for one very simple reason, if my brain told me to drink, I would drink. It was in charge. I was not in charge. It was managing my life. Step two, there is a solution. Sit in a meeting and look at the sober people, and you try and figure out whether you're so supremely different that it's not going to work for you. Well, if you go to enough meetings, you'll hear your own story told back to you so many times. It's really difficult to peddle the idea that it won't work for you, because you'll just hear someone who's the same. Or I was really a collection of all of the things I heard around me once I've been to enough meetings. So if it would work for you, it would work for me. The nature of the higher power, don't do a theology, don't try and get a master's in theology before you decide to take the steps. You don't have to have a master's in physics to boil a kettle. So why do people want to figure out God before they'll even take step two? It's a total red herring. The point is, there is clearly a force in the universe which enables people who are alcoholic to stay sober and thrive. Hey, would you like some of that? That's what step two is about. Step three, you do what they did, and you trust it's going to be all right if you just do what you're told in AA. Some people revel in being sort of maverick renegades and rebels, and I don't like being told what to do. Well, like it, not like it, doesn't matter. What matters is the results. If you're getting, pardon my French, but crappy results from following the latest impulse that's just come into your brain, maybe you want to be told what to do. Maybe that would work better. So try it for a little bit. See if your life improves. I did, and it did. So, the idea, I think, is this in what the AA program has to offer. The idea is that my job is simply each day to do what I believe my higher power wants me to do. That's it. A life is made up of days. If I get the day right, and I do that day after day, I'll get my life right. So the only thing that concerns me is the day. My job is to get the day right, is to ask God, what am I going to do? And then to get on with it. The problem, there are a couple of problems. The first one is the past. My head, my mind was so preoccupied with other people's wickedness. Traditionally it would have been called sin. Now it's called, people in each generation, people call it something else. But I was preoccupied by how nothing was my fault, but everything was your fault. I was preoccupied by a litany of things that I'd done wrong. I was preoccupied by secrets. And in order to compensate for all of those and try to grab some kind of kicks and fun and comfort from this world before I kick the bucket. Kicks, fun, and comfort. A friend of mine refers to it as the KFC plan before you kick the KFC bucket. My life was just that. I just roll around between resentment and shame and fear and guilt and grasping and planning and scheming and frantic. while I was conflicted, I wasn't going to be interested in God's will. I needed the ego to have a nuclear device, a thermonuclear device, detonated at its core to knock it out of action. Now, the ego is never entirely knocked out of action, but it can be, you know, when you if you got a stick shift car, when you um, with a clutch, it disengages the engine from the transmission. I'm told. I don't know much about cars. I believe that to be the case. So first of all, the ego is massively shrunk by the program, but really it's about disengaging it. And what those 6 intervening steps did, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, was detach me from my ego. I no longer wanted its gifts. I no longer wanted its system for living. I realized I am not, and this is the insight that came from completing the last amend on my list. In other words, doing the last thing I was capable of doing. Of course, there are, the period of reconstruction ahead is long, and some people you can't find straight away, you find them 25 years later, fine. But I had to get to the point where there was literally nothing more that I could do to make amends. I was like casting round saying to God, is there anything else? Nothing else came. I realized I am not my physical body. I am not my material circumstances. I am not my past. I am not the stuff that people have done to me. I'm not my nationality, my sex, my gender, my sexual orientation. I'm not any of those things. Those are temporary adornments. But they're not me, which means I can never be harmed. All of my ego's plans were centered in the world. And even abstract things like reputation is really to do with the world. I mean, if in spirit we're all just children of God, is a phrase, emanations of the universal spirit. What are these differences that we're talking about? That reputation, even the abstract things, are of the world. The intervening 6 steps, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, put me in a position where I still have a life. I mean, I still live somewhere. I'm married. I have a job. I have a couple of jobs. I have an everyday life. But the function of that everyday life is to demonstrate to others that I'm more than those things. The function doesn't lie in those things in and of itself. But let's make it practical. What it means is, my happiness is based on what I contribute to my life on behalf of my higher power. It does not depend on my circumstances. I'm not a victim of my circumstances, my past, the world around me. Because between what happened to me and my emotional reaction was my interpretation of what had just happened. It was the interpretation and the perception of the world that was killing me. It was never you. It was never your fault. Steps 10, 11, and 12. Steps 4 through 9 placed me in a position where I wanted to do God's will, and I was freed of the past and of the material world. Not that I don't live in it and function in it and take my life, take my duties in my life seriously. I do take the duties in my life seriously. I don't take it seriously. I take my spiritual life seriously. And then step 12 is the implementation of that. And it has this is the content of my life, is step 12. I've got to do a couple of things. I've got to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. I carry the message also within a couple of other fellowships I'm not going to mention here. But I have to carry the message within Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have to practice these principles in all my affairs. Now, I'll talk about 10 and 11 as really a method for doing that, but what is the content? The content is more important than the method, and the content resides in step 12. And so my job, I think my main job is sponsorship. That is the process by which I show other people some very simple tasks to perform, some very basic ideas, very simple ideas that don't need education to understand them. They're not difficult. When I find a problem, when I find an idea in AA difficult, it's not because it's hard to understand, it's because I don't like it at some level, so I don't understand it. I understand it when they say, let it go. I know what that means. I just don't like it. So suddenly it's a hard idea to let go of something. Because we've all done it. You know, when you're waiting for, when a bus is cancelled or a train is cancelled or a plane is cancelled, the moment you go, ugh, it'll be all right. I'll get another bus. I'll get another train. I'll get another plane. I'll go and do something else. We've all let go of something. You know, when you call someone and eventually you realize they're never going to answer the phone, you go, ugh, I'll call someone else. Everyone's done it. Even the craziest person has done it. So we know what letting go means. We just don't want to do it with everything else. So the program is simple. My job is to lay out this simple program to other people in step 12. I also get to share at meetings. I also get to participate in meetings. I also get to do service at meetings. I've done service throughout the AA service structure from group level all the way down to conference level and subcommittees to the General Service Board. No more than one subcommittee to the General Service Board. And I've carried the message outside AA to doctors, to other professionals, to the armed services in particular, because of my family history. When my primary purpose is to stay sober and to carry this message to other alcoholics, I'm fine. If I have another purpose, I'm not fine. I want to be at peace today. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be at peace. The question is, do you want it to the exclusion of everything else? If I want something else, I can't have peace. If all I want is peace, I can have it. And then maybe I have the other stuff too. But I've got to want just to have peace. If that's all I want, it's available. And it's available it's like step 12, particularly the carrying the message part. The other service stuff is great, but carrying the message to other alcoholics and actually carrying the message of AA to professionals, to people in society, that is like placing me inside an electrical circuit and I light up. There's a speaker from the Twin Cities who says we're like these giant magnets which have been dragged through the junkyard of life, and all of this crap has got stuck to us. And the purpose of the program, of the 12-step program, is to demagnetize us so all of the crap falls off. And then he says, and then you discover what you really are. You're a lamp. And that's what step 12 is where I function as a lamp. I'm not doing anything. I'm simply making myself available to something to work through me. That's all. And whether it works through me, I don't care. It's not my business. I mean, I'd prefer it to have an effect, but I can't judge. To judge anything, I would have to have at my disposal all facts in the universe and be able to marshal and assemble and analyze them and understand all of their interrelations and ramifications. So to say I can't judge is not a moral statement, it's a statement of fact. Whenever I think I'm judging something, I'm wrong. I'm making something up based on a fragment of reality which I'm perceiving wrongly for my own egoic purposes. So, not judging is simply a smart thing to do. It's a recognition I'm unable to judge. Example, I'm sure you want an example. I really thought that being an alcoholic was the worst thing that could possibly happen to a nice person like me. And it was the best thing that happened to a nice person like me. Because I have a purpose in my life. Not everyone in my family has a purpose in their life. I'm not going to go into details. It's their story, not mine. I wouldn't swap with anyone. So, I thought the alcoholism was a really bad idea. Turns out it wasn't. So who am I to judge anything? Practicing these principles in all our affairs, I think, is also very simple. I say to the higher power, where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to say? To whom? And I get on with it. I spent a lot of time in my youth thinking about myself or thinking very abstract thoughts. If that's entertaining, good luck to you. But if you're not enjoying it, there is another way to live, and it's being in contact with reality, and reality is entirely benign, I'll have you know, with the right attitude. My job is to be fully engaged in life, saying in every situation, what can I bring to this situation? The guiding principle in the big book is not what I can get out of a situation, but what I can bring to it. I don't need to worry about my finances. I don't need to worry about my career. I don't need to worry about my relationships. If I just take the attitude of forgive everyone for everything and then contribute constructively and grow where I'm planted, I'll be fine. Everything has worked out. If God is in charge of the universe, and the smart money says he is, now not all the data are in yet, but the smart money says that God's in charge of the universe. God, however you understand God. If you don't believe in I don't mean a Christian God or a Jewish God or a blah, blah, blah. But then if I need to get a job, there'll be a job somewhere. My experience in the last 27 years is that if I show up on time, keep my nose clean, keep my mouth largely shut, and say, what can I do to help? People are thrilled because not many people fulfill those criteria. If you fulfill those criteria, they'll find you something to do. And if you carry on doing it, then they'll give you money at the end of the week or at the end of the month. It's almost magical how that works. Getting money was really difficult when I was drinking, and getting enough money, now that's a qualified word, getting enough money has been a cinch sober. If you go to lots of meetings, there are always lots of people to ask, and there are lots of people with ideas. And your ego may not like the ideas that come your way, but your pocket will. There's more I want to say about sponsorship, more I want to say about practicing these principles in all our affairs, but there's something I need to cover the basics of 10 and 11. So, this works in a circuit. First thing in the morning, God, please direct my thinking. Now, what does that mean? I don't think. My physical brain does the thinking. It thinks at me. I don't create my own thoughts as an act of the will. I can interact with my brain and say, hey, let's think about the Eiffel Tower and imagine an elephant dancing underneath it. And my brain comes back with a picture of the Eiffel Tower with an elephant dancing underneath it. The question with my brain, it's like a computer. Its output depends what program is running, what app is running. On my phone, I've got a phone when you can only run one app on the screen at a time. You try and run two apps on the screen, it doesn't work. I'm either running the ego app or I'm running the God app. What is the ego app? Its basic coding is this. It's concerned with my welfare and your conduct. And the God app is concerned with my conduct and your welfare. So when I say, God, please direct my thinking, what I'm really saying is I'm going to flip to the God app today. The only two sources of information are my ego and God. And I think that this program is really very simple. All I ever have to do is keep flipping back to the God app when I discover I'm on the ego app. But it starts first thing in the morning. I'm not the thinker, I'm being thought at. I'm the decision maker that gets to decide what thoughts to listen to. Am I going to listen to my ego thoughts or am I going to listen to my God thoughts? The answers that my brain gives me depends on who I'm addressing. If I address my ego, I'll get ego answers back. If I address God, I'll get God answers back. An AA gentleman from Eaglewood, Colorado, I think, would say that you just have to trust that if you keep asking God for direction, that what comes to you then is more likely to be God's will than if you're not saying sincerely, God, please direct my thinking. You just have to trust it. A friend of mine from Poplar in London would say, if you can talk to God, don't you think he'd be able to talk back? Now there's a thought. So I ask God, and I'm not asking God anything fancy. I'm asking, what shall I do today and in what order? When the big book says we're about to give you some tips on meditation, it meant what it said. It literally thinks that the tips it's giving you are prayer and meditation. Who am I to disagree? If they say that's meditation, I'm going to trust that's meditation. Now, I've done some other funky meditation too, but the big book meditation is consider my plans for the day. Then all I have to do is get on with it. And as I said earlier, the question is how can I contribute constructively to the lives of the people around me? What needs to be done today? What's mission critical? Do that first. During the day, step 11 kicks in as well, bottom of 87. I only have two problems in my life, or what they're not really problems, they're challenges. A problem is something without a solution. As soon as it has a solution, it's no longer a problem. And God's already created all the solutions, so there's no such thing as a problem. But things will appear to me to be a problem. What are the two types of problem? Number one, I'm agitated. I'm not at peace. The content of why I'm not at peace is not worth analyzing. Did you know that one illusion is not more illusory than another illusion? An illusion that flits through your mind for 1 second is no smaller than an illusion which has been stuck in your brain for 40 years. Neither of them are any more not there than the other one. Something that's unreal is unreal regardless of its magnitude. If I can change my mind about one thing, I can change my mind about anything. There's no order of difficulty here. It's all a matter of willingness. I thought trusting God was going to be really difficult. It turned out it's a matter of willingness. Am I willing to trust God? In other words, admit that my ego has been lying to me for the last 50 years, and I'm the dummy that's been believing it. That's the price of trusting God, is realizing you've been a dummy all these decades, building castles in a crumbling physical world to protect yourself against an inevitable death. Seriously, that was your plan. Amazing. You know, to trust God means to admit that, but there's no sin in admit. It was a mistake. I just made a mistake. If I've made a mistake, there's no point in digging the mistake in any further. So just, I'm gonna be fine. Agitated or doubtful? I don't know what to do. The only two situations which appear to be problems, I'm agitated or doubtful. What does the big book say? I'm no longer running the show. Why does it say that? Why would it suggest that? Well, because I'm running the show, in that I'm trying to figure stuff out instead of going to God. I ask God for the right thought or action, say, thy will be done. Very recently, or not, in the last few weeks and months, when so-called problems arise, I've been much less inclined to analyze what's going on with me psychologically. With those wretched columns, remember the columns from step 4? That there's a function in step 4. But writing out wretched columns every time I have an emotional quirk, no, I don't do it. If it's working, if you're doing that and it's working for you, do not stop. I do not want to interfere with anyone's process which is currently working for them. But if you're kind of constantly doing columns and it's not working, maybe you want to try something else. Here's something else. You can try it. Either it'll work or it won't. Just a first sign of trouble. God, show me the right thought or action. Get a pen and a piece of paper. Put on some of that like Lakota flute music or something. Turn the phone on and see what comes to you. You already know the answer. You already know the answer, because the answer is always hidden where the problem is. The road away from God is the road back. That's why the answer has already been created at the time the problem was created. You just take the same road back. That's why there is no problem that can't be solved. The problem is always an illusion. All that happens is I have to realize I asked the wrong voice inside me how to perceive this situation. Dummy old me asked my ego how to perceive the situation. If I see conflict and darkness and blah, 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 you know what? I'm not even saying that. I'm projecting that out from within me. It's not out there. It's in here, but I'm seeing it out there. But I don't like the idea there's darkness in me, so I'd rather see it in you. If you've watched the news in the last, I don't know, year or two or decade or two, have you noticed lots of people think that other people are wrong? If other people would change, I would be okay. And everyone thinks they're right. I identify with that. That's my ego state, is nothing wrong with me, but there's something wrong with you. And these great tears of compassion are dripping down my face because I'm saying if only they would understand how they're hurting everyone, we would be all right. But what I'm really doing is hiding. I'm masking the fact that I'm stuck on my own, separate from God, and I can't stand that, so I find something wrong with you. So, agitated or doubtful, God, give me the right thought or action, come back, just drop it, come back to the source. Step 10 on pages 84 and 85 gives me a bit more meat to chew on during the day. So if my job during the day is to keep doing God's will and to stay close to the higher power, step 10 on pages 84 and 85 give me practical tools for doing that. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, or fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. I go straight back to God. Do not analyze, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Just come straight back to the higher power and say, what do you want me to do? Every day is a day when I must carry the vision of God's will into all my activities. Thy will, not mine, be done. It says these are thoughts which must go with us constantly. Now, here's a thought. I'm going to tell a little story. I've only got 4 and a bit minutes. I'm going to tell a little story. A man goes to a rabbi and says that he's plagued with dark thoughts and intrusive thoughts, we would call it these days. And the rabbi says, I need you to travel to, I don't know, Vitebsk, a town, Yaroslavl, a town 150 miles away. And he traveled, he said, I want you to go and see this particular rabbi there. He has the answer to your question about intrusive thoughts. And he treks. He arrives just before sundown on Shabbat. He knocks on the door furiously. Let me in, let me in. Nothing. He can see through the window. They're bustling around. They're doing the final preparations for Shabbat. They've got the candles there ready to light. They've got the challah. Just everything is there. Completely ignored. So he goes to the shul. He stays for the service, and he sleeps in the shul, in the synagogue, overnight. And the next day, he says to the rabbi, who's being really friendly to him at this point, it's great that you're being friendly to me now, but what I don't get, you knew that I was sent to you to ask a question. And I was knocking on your door and you didn't answer. You didn't even have the grace to answer. And now you're being friendly and you want me to be friendly back. What's going on here? And the rabbi said, oh, no, you misunderstand. I already answered your question. Just because someone knocks at your door does not mean you have to answer it. I'm not in charge of what thoughts come into my mind. I'm not in charge of what I think of, but I am in charge of what I think about. I'm in charge of how long I think the thought, of whether I believe it is true, whether I put the weight of my will behind it, or whether I dismiss it and move on to the next thing. Every day is a day when I must carry the vision of God's will into all my activities. Thy will be done, not mine. How can I best serve thee? These are thoughts which must go with me constantly. The program for me is not about clearing up my ego or trying to make it nice. It's about disengaging it and accessing a higher consciousness. And I do that. It's very simple. It sounds woo-woo, but it's actually super practical. It's literally turning my mind again and again and again. Quiet. I don't resist. Do not resist evil. I don't resist the thoughts. I simply turn away and substitute a different thought. End of the day. Page 86. 5-minute debrief with the higher power. 5 to 10-minute debrief. Take notes of corrective measures and things to do. But it's a conversation with God. It's not self-analysis. What I want to say about sponsorship, if the door is shut, don't push it. If you're trying to sponsor someone and you get the 4 R's, what are the 4 R's? The 4 R's are resistance, a reaction, resistance, rejection, and reproach. You're halfway through giving an instruction, already the reaction is coming back. The idea is resisted, the idea is rejected, and then you're reproached for suggesting it in the first place. give it up. Say, look, sweetheart, it's not working today. It might work tomorrow. You consider whether you want what I have. And we'll have another chat tomorrow. And if not, that's fine. Let's be friends instead. I'm not going to fight you over this. This is not, the foie gras geese and like pushing the food down the throat. No, 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 no. I will offer this to you, and if you don't want it, I'll offer it to someone else, but I'm not going to fight you. Because it doesn't work. So God bless you, and we'll be friends instead. It's the most important lesson I've learned in sponsorship. Just gone over 40 minutes, so I'm going to stop. Thank you very much for listening.